Welcome back to the Inspirational Bible Bites podcast. You know, the place to be if you're looking to tackle some of life's tougher questions, but through that, biblical lens.
That's right.
And I'm David,
I'm Barbara.
and we're diving into episode number 6 today.
It's a big one.
It is a heavy one.
Yeah.
Now, if you're new to Inspirational Bible Bites, we're a Christian podcast, and we look at, various issues that come up in Christian life and just day-to-day topics that are relevant to men and women of faith.
Absolutely.
And if you find this deep dive helpful, don't forget to check out our Inspirational Bible Bites YouTube channel
Yes.
for even more in-depth discussions and a supportive community over there.
We love to have you.
We do. So today we're tackling the topic of suicide.
Mm-hmm.
It's something we've received a lot of questions about.
A lot of questions about.
And understandably so.
Right.
It's such a difficult subject, but one we need to approach with compassion and with biblical guidance.
For sure.
What are some of the questions that you've been hearing, Barbara?
Well, a lot of listeners are grappling with the immense pain that leads a person to even consider suicide.
Yeah.
And they're asking, where is God in all of this?
Yeah.
What does the Bible actually say about this?
Those are hard questions.
Yeah, they are.
It's so tough to reconcile such profound suffering with the idea of a loving God.
Right.
So where do we even begin to unpack this?
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge right away that the Bible does not shy away from the reality of despair.
Okay.
And it doesn't sugarcoat the struggles that people face.
Right.
The Bible shows us that even those we consider heroes of faith, right, experience deep anguish and question their own existence.
So you're saying even the people we hold up as examples of strength and faith went through periods of intense darkness.
Absolutely. Like Elijah, for instance.
Okay.
After his victory over the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, he's suddenly overwhelmed with fear and despair.
Okay.
And in 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 4, he actually prays for death,
Wow.
saying, I have had enough, Lord.
Wow.
Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors.
So Elijah, the prophet who called down fire from heaven, was so despondent he wanted to die.
Yes,
That's a pretty stark contrast to the triumphant image we often have of him.
it is. And you know what? It shows us that even the most faithful among us can be vulnerable to profound emotional pain.
Yeah.
And it normalizes those feelings for us,
Right.
We're not failing in our faith if we experience deep sadness or despair.
I see what you mean. It's comforting to know that we're not alone in those feelings. Even the great figures of the Bible wrestled with them.
Right.
But how does that help someone who is actually contemplating suicide? Well, what message of hope does the Bible offer in those darkest moments?
Well, in Elijah's case, God didn't condemn him for his despair.
Okay.
Instead, he met him where he was,
Mhm.
providing him with rest, food, and an angel to care for him.
Right.
He acknowledged Elijah's pain and helped him regain his strength. And that's a powerful message for us today. Even when we're at our lowest, God is there, ready to meet our needs and offer support.
That's a beautiful image, the idea of God tending to our wounds and gently guiding us back to a place of strength.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of the passage in Psalm 23 where David describes God as a shepherd who leads us beside quiet waters and restores our soul.
Exactly. The Bible repeatedly emphasizes that God is a God of comfort and compassion. He doesn't abandon us in our pain.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he understands our pain more deeply than we can imagine.
Right.
Hebrews chapter 4, verses 15 and 16 remind us that Jesus, as fully human, experienced the full range of human emotions, including temptation and suffering. Because of that, he can empathize with our weaknesses and offer us grace and mercy when we need it most.
So even though we may feel completely alone in our struggles, the Bible tells us that God is right there with us, offering comfort and understanding.
Absolutely. And not only that, the Bible encourages us to reach out for help from others. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, it says, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ.
Yeah.
We're not meant to bear our burdens alone.
Right.
God has placed people in our lives who can offer support, encouragement, and a listening ear.
That makes so much sense. Suffering in isolation only amplifies the pain.
Yeah.
It's like trying to navigate a dark maze without a light.
Right.
But when we reach out to others, it's like someone shines a light into the darkness and helps us find our way.
Exactly. And sometimes that light can come from professional help as well.
Yeah.
Mental health professionals are equipped to help us process difficult emotions and develop healthy coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
There's no shame in seeking professional guidance when we're struggling.
You've touched on some really important points here, Barbara. It's clear that the Bible acknowledges the reality of despair and offers a message of hope and support for those struggling with suicidal thoughts. But I think there's still a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
What about the act of suicide itself? How does the Bible address that specifically?
That's a crucial question, David, and one that requires careful consideration.
Yeah.
While the Bible doesn't directly address suicide, it does offer principles that guide our understanding of life, death, and God's sovereignty.
Okay, this is where it gets deep.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're finding this conversation as fascinating as I am, be sure to check out our Inspirational Bible Bites YouTube channel
Yes,
for even more in-depth discussions like this one.
it's true.
We've got a great community over there.
We do.
But now, let's dive into those principles you mentioned, Barbara.
Yes.
How do they shed light on the complexities of suicide?
Well, one of the core principles that emerges from the Bible is this idea of the sanctity of life.
Okay.
From the very beginning in Genesis, we see that God created life and declared it good.
Right.
He breathed life into Adam, and throughout Scripture, life is consistently portrayed as a precious gift from God.
So you're saying that because life is a gift from God, we have a responsibility to cherish and protect it?
Yes.
Even our own lives when they feel unbearable.
Exactly. And Psalm 139 beautifully expresses this idea. It says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made,
Yeah.
that God knit us together in our mother's womb.
Mm,
Our lives have inherent value because we are created in the image of God.
that's a powerful reminder, especially for those who might be feeling like their lives don't matter or that the world would be better off without them.
Right.
The Bible clearly states that every life has intrinsic worth.
Yes, and this leads us to another important principle that's woven throughout Scripture.
Okay.
God's sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible repeatedly affirms that God is in control, that He has a plan for each of our lives, and that His ways are higher than our ways.
But how does that reconcile with the idea of free will?
Right.
If God is in control, what choice do we really have?
Yeah.
And how do we make sense of tragic choices like suicide in light of God's sovereignty?
That's a question that has challenged theologians for centuries, David. And to be honest, there are no easy answers. The Bible holds both God's sovereignty and human free will in tension.
Yeah.
We know that God has a plan, but we also know that we have the ability to make choices, even choices that go against His will.
So how do we reconcile those two seemingly conflicting ideas?
It's a mystery in many ways,
Yeah.
but perhaps it's helpful to think of it like this.
Okay.
Imagine a tapestry being woven.
Okay.
God is the master weaver. He sees the grand design, the intricate patterns that make up the whole.
Right.
We are like individual threads, contributing our own colors and textures to the tapestry.
Hmm.
God has a plan for where each thread will go, but we have the freedom to move, to shift, to sometimes even tangle the threads.
That's a really helpful analogy. So even though we might make choices that seem to disrupt the pattern, God can still work with those choices, incorporating them into His grand design.
Yes. And ultimately, we trust that God's love and grace are big enough to encompass even our most devastating mistakes.
Mm.
Romans chapter 8, verse 28 tells us that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose.
Right.
Even in the face of tragedy, God can bring about redemption and healing.
That's a powerful promise to hold on to, especially for those who are grieving the loss of a loved one to suicide.
Yes.
It's hard to imagine how good can come from such immense pain. But the Bible offers us hope that God can work even through the darkest of circumstances.
Yes, and I think it's important to acknowledge that grief is a natural and necessary part of the healing process.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel angry, confused, heartbroken.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to suppress those emotions or pretend they don't exist.
Right.
Bring them to God.
Yeah.
He can handle your honesty and your pain.
And we also need to extend that same grace and understanding to the person who died by suicide.
Yes.
It's easy to judge or to wonder why they didn't reach out for help.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to remember that they were struggling with immense pain that may have clouded their judgment and distorted their perception.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so crucial to talk about mental health openly and honestly, to break down the stigma that surrounds it.
Mm-hmm.
We need to create a culture where people feel safe to share their struggles and to ask for help without fear of judgment or shame.
I think you've hit on a really crucial point, Barbara. We need to move beyond platitudes and superficial reassurances and really grapple with the complexities of mental health and suicide within a biblical framework.
Yes.
And I hope this conversation has been a step in that direction for our listeners.
I do too.
And speaking of helpful resources, I want to remind everyone that if you're finding this discussion beneficial, you can find even more in-depth content on our Inspirational Bible Bites YouTube channel. We've got a wonderful community there, and we'd love for you to join us.
Yes, we would.
But let's continue this conversation. What practical advice can we offer listeners who might be struggling with suicidal thoughts right now, or who know someone who is? What concrete steps can they take?
Well, if you are personally struggling, please know that you don't have to carry this burden alone.
Right.
Reach out for help immediately.
Where should they turn? Who should they talk to?
There are so many resources available.
Right.
And the first step is simply acknowledging that you need support.
Yeah.
Talk to a trusted friend or family member, a pastor, a mental health professional.
Right.
There are hotlines like the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline available 24/7, ready to listen and offer support.
Yeah, sometimes just having someone to hear you, to validate your feelings, can make a world of difference.
It really can. And for those who know someone who might be struggling, don't hesitate to reach out to them.
Yeah.
Express your concern. Listen without judgment,
Right.
and encourage them to seek professional help. Sometimes just knowing that someone cares can be a lifeline.
And if someone is in immediate danger, what should we do?
If you believe someone is in imminent danger of harming themselves, don't hesitate to call 911 or take them to the nearest emergency room. It's always better to err on the side of caution in these situations.
Right.
Remember, you could be saving a life.
You've given us so much to think about today, Barbara.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with? Like a final thought, a takeaway to carry with them?
Yes, I think it's so crucial to remember that even amidst the darkness, hope remains.
Yeah.
God's love is a constant, an unwavering beacon in the storm.
Right.
He sees our pain,
Yeah.
he hears our cries, and he offers comfort and a path towards healing. Don't give up on that hope. Don't give up on yourself.
That's beautifully said, Barbara.
Thank you.
Never underestimate the power of hope, and remember you are not alone.
Okay.
And we've got a supportive community over on our Inspirational Bible Bites YouTube channel.
We do.
So come join us over there for more discussions like this one.
We'd love to have you.
Until next time, may you find peace and strength in God's loving presence.